Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the memories and experience that playing tabletop games with friends and family can create. On this show, we're going to be talking about meta in games. Before we get to that topic, though, we're going to talk real briefly on what we've been playing. So I'll just lead off and then I'll go to Nathan. And then we had Dan on the episode today. I'm very glad to have Dan back. It's good to be having this discussion with Dan, and you're going to see why in a little bit. I'm super excited about it. He's going to bring a lot to it, so it's going to be fun. The first game I'm going to talk about, I just have four. They're going to be very brief, is Zombie Life Insurance. In this game, you are buying life insurance for either becoming a zombie or not becoming a zombie. And the not becoming the zombie insurance has the best yield, but it's very hard not to become a zombie in this game. This game is okay. It is horrible at its max player count of 5. This is you run out of insurance cards, which makes no sense. Before the 5th or 6th, I remember with it. It's like you only get like 5 turns, like literally 5 turns in this game. So that's it. 5 turns, 2 actions. Your actions can be buy insurance. You can do that for both. You can play a card. The cards are not that great. Overall, it's a meh game, but I did semi enjoy it. This game will probably go into the board game library, but I don't think it's going to last very long. So that's Zombie Life Insurance. I don't think anyone else here has played that. I did get my own copy of Beer and Bread. This game is an amazing 2-player game. I have a lot of fun with it. I still haven't figured it out to the point where, I'm like winning all the time. There's a lot of strategy with this game, and trading hands in the game throws everything out the window. For the most part, it's really hard for me to remember the strategy when I hand you the cards and remember all the cards that are in there. So when they come back to me, I can make efficient use for it. So this is a really good game to increase my strategy. But in Beer and Bread, you're baking beer and producing you're baking bread and producing beer, sorry. And you are trying to get the best score, and you get the lowest score for your stack of beer or bread. Whatever the lowest one is, your final score. So you're trying to balance it out, and you can only have, unless you have cards that change it, 1 beer and 1 bread before you send them off. So you produce a beer, you produce a beer, you produce a beer, you produce a bread. You can't produce any more until you play a card that gives you some really cool in-game effects, but then those get slided off and you can build more. It's there's so much to this game. There's you in the good years, you trade hands every turn. In the bad years, you keep your hand, but there's less resources available. So you're really fighting for things. And the game plays pretty quick. Really great game. If you're looking for a good 2-player game, I highly recommend Beer and Bread, even though I messed up the title like 18 times. But that's the title. Second to last game is the Innis expansion. Real quick, if you love Innis, gives you 5 players. If you don't want 5 players, don't get the expansion. There's other stuff in it. It gives you a couple more epic cards. But this is really the reason for the expansion is the 5th player, period. That's it. And I really like Shem Phillips. He's a great designer. Before today, I would have said I've never played a game that he designed that I didn't like. That's no longer true. This game is horrible. They have so many like rookie design mistakes in this game that it's like he had 3 seconds to make a board game. He made a board game and it got shipped. Some of the things that don't work in this game is what would probably be the worst way to do a draft. So the worst way to do a draft, in case you want to know, is only one person gets cards. That person is the star player, so they get all the cards. They get 5 cards, right? That person picks the best card out of that and hands the 4 over. And then that person picks one of those, and it goes on until the last player. Okay, what would you think you would do next?
I would say draft again in reverse order.
No, draft again with the same player. So the same player draws those cards, takes the best one again, and then passes them on. And then what would you do for the third time? Same thing, by the way, just spoiler. Um, so the first player has the best hand. You only get 3 cards and you have to use them. The last player has cards that they probably can't use. And the game doesn't let you keep the cards per round. You play them or lose them. So it tends to be the last player has a junk hand and a junk round. There's an incredible amount of luck to this game. You're just trying to build 4 ships, so that sounds fine, and you're trying to get resources to do that. But there's take that cards that destroy a ship, and there's only like 2 of them. So whoever luckily got that first player blows up your ship, or takes your resources, or just horrible. I mean, it's not good. And I love everything he's ever came out with. And I was super excited to play this game because, like, Raiders of the North Sea, awesome, awesome game. Great. I don't know if you would consider it 100% intro Euro game or worker placement game, but it's pretty close. You can have people play Raiders of the North Sea without much trouble. If they never played a board game before, it might be a little difficult, but it's not bad. So that's what I've been playing. So what have you been playing, Nathan?
Well, first I wanted to comment on Shipwrights, and I definitely agree with a lot of that. It was, I believe, the first of his various trilogies, the first game he released in any of his trilogies. So he's definitely improved a lot as a designer since he's...
Yeah, that game's not garbage. But
yeah.
The rest of everything I've ever played from him, I've loved.
You know, it kind of says something that, you know, I don't remember anything about the game other than I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's not good.
So, what I've been playing 2 expansions for Res Arcana. That would be Lux et Tepra and Perle.
Isn't that right? That looks like completely non-pronounceable. But I'll hear it again.
Perle and Perai and Lux et Tembre. Something like that. They definitely made it difficult to pronounce or even search for their games, but they are very good games. Res Arcana is like a limited deck builder, essentially. There's 8 cards that you're going to get. You don't technically ever get any cards beyond those 8 that you're going to be drawing from your deck. You can add like locations and monuments that give you extra powers, but I love the fact that you have that limited 8 cards. It means it's a quick game, and a lot can happen in that quick game. As far as the expansions though, Lux et Tepra adds a lot of demons, basically, that are more aggressive cards. So if you want a lot more combat or a lot more attacking and being mean to your other players, this is the expansion for that. And I know Dan's played the game a lot and probably has played the expansion, so he could probably agree or disagree with me.
I haven't tried the expansions at all, so this is all news to me. But continue.
Okay. And Perle Imperii adds a new resource it actually...
Pearls?
Yes. It lengthens the game a little bit. It now is played to 13 points instead of 10, but it also gives you more ways of getting points because the pearls themselves are points, and they can be spent for 2 resources. So it gives you a lot more flexibility, keeps you from getting into a stalemate where you have a hand of cards that you can't use because you don't have the right resources and have real troubles getting those resources. And the biggest thing is it adds a bunch more cards, a lot of variety that I felt that Res Arcana needed. It's a great game. I just felt like I wanted to change things up periodically in it. And these allow you to do that, so they are both great.
Are these expansions shuffle everything together in play, or is it like put in just one and...
Yeah, you can shuffle everything in together and play. So you can have base game and all the expansions all at once. I actually kind of like them together because I felt like the Lux at Tebra was a little bit too heavy on the attack, and if you add the Perle, it does dilute that a little bit. So it goes back to being a more flexible as far as your game style. The next game I've been playing is Vegas Showdown, and I'm not as good as James as far as getting it positioned correctly. Now, Vegas Showdown is a pretty straightforward bidding game. So what you're doing is you're going to have different casino rooms that are up for auction each turn, and you have one single pawn that you can use to either bid for one of these rooms or go for the kind of, I can't afford anything, so I go for these lesser things. And once you bid, you only get to bid once unless somebody outbids you, and then your piece comes out and you get to bid on something else. Beyond that, the game, once you've won a bid, you get that room, you put it on your map, and that will increase either your revenue, your population, or your points. And each turn you get income based on whichever's lower, your revenue or your population. I don't think population is the term they use, but I'll go with that. It's very simple, straightforward, but it's a lot of fun.
You gotta try Lords of Vegas next.
Yes, I have
That
played.
game is awesome.
I have that on played that on TTS, but I have not played a physical copy of that.
Dan's probably looking at his copy over in the corner. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that's really cool about this used copy of Vegas Showdown that I got,
The giant green sticker that says $23.
well, we can ignore that because I don't think that's actually what I paid for it.
Ah.
But I also found out when I opened it, it contains another game in it,
Oh.
which is Nexus Ops.
Wait, it had Nexus Ops in it?
Yes, it did.
How does it fit?
That's a bind.
It seriously had Nexus Ops inside of it with all the mini things?
Yep. So it's like everything was kind of taken out and put in bags, but to make it fit. But yeah, Nexus Ops was in here.
Wow.
So I got
Nexus Ops. Nexus Ops is in my collection, and that's a pretty good one too.
That's an awesome win there.
Yeah, and I found Nexus Ops. If you played Cry Havoc, there's a lot of similarities to that, but I find Nexus Ops is a lot more streamlined compared to Cry Havoc.
Yeah, Cry Havoc had some problems.
Cry Havoc had the variable player powers, and I felt like that actually got in the way sometimes because it was a little too asymmetric. This doesn't have the variable player powers, and I don't think it needs it. And it also, you only play to 12 points, so the game actually ends pretty quickly. As soon as it gets to the point where, okay, this guy's starting to pull ahead, you've won the game. That's the one downside. Yeah, the one downside of that is, like, once you see somebody pulling ahead, you can't really stop them. But again,
It's an old game too, though.
yeah. But once it gets to that point, the game's pretty much over anyways. So it's a pretty minor issue for me. So that's the games I've been playing. Dan, what have you been playing?
All right, I'll mention two here as long as we're at it. So I played Isle of Skye recently. I have the big box version of Isle of Skye, so I've got a couple of like mini expansions in it. So we've been trying out some of the mini expansions. We did Borders is one of them, and Tunnels is the other. And we haven't tried Druids yet. That's the third that's in that big box. We found both of them to be just a slight variation of the base game. They added some additional options and choices to your, like, what you can do during your turn and how you build your home area. I think Tunnels was probably the more interesting of the two, but nothing too crazy. Tunnels actually does have you add tiles to the giant bag of tiles that you have to mix together. So you kind of have to separate that out if you're not going to play with it again right away. So take that with what you will. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is we got 51st State back to the table recently. We played with the newest expansion deck. This would be the James.
Is this the
what's the name of
master
this
set?
one?
Is this the master set version or the version?
I mean,
Okay.
I own the 51st State Masters Edition,
Yeah.
yeah. But like they somewhat recently came off of Kickstarter with the Ultimate Edition that included this expansion. So I got this expansion separately and put it into my 51st State Masters
The original.
Edition because
Did
I
they
already
keep
had
the-
all the other stuff.
They kept the same backs and everything, so you can use the new expansion.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yes.
Hey, side note. Can you still get that for the store?
I have to look that up.
All right.
I'll let you know. Anyways, so this particular expansion adds a certain element of like area control to the game. So there's a 3x3 grid of territories on the center of the table, and as part of the first turn's lookout phase, you have to pass on drafting a card to set up your first outpost. And thereon, you have various opportunities to upgrade your outposts and build more outposts. Ken was the one who interacted with outposts during our only test play with this expansion. He actually managed to push me off the map. So
really?
he eliminated my only outpost, and I double checked the rules, and there's no way to place an outpost unless you already have an outpost on the map outside of that very first turn. So I was off the map for the entire game. But like it didn't really matter. I still had fun with the game. It was interesting to see it, the new cards at play. I still won by 2 or 3 points, I think, on turn 4. So it was, but yeah, no, 51st State is still first state, effectively.
Yeah, I really like that game.
It just gives you a couple more like options to use your cards and interact with your opponents, which it's not a bad thing.
I think my favorite expansion still is the Rise of Moloch or whatever. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The machines, just the machine stuff.
Yeah, the machine one.
I like that one.
Off the top of my head, I think I kind of like. I think it's a toss up between allies and scavengers for me.
Scavengers is really cool. I actually don't think I played allies yet.
It's cool.
I think the new one you're talking about is No Man's Land. Is that correct?
That's it. Thank you. No Man's Land.
I had to wait for the 5th edition, which is the ultimate edition, final vision of the game until next year.
When they release another expansion.
It'll be the Super Mega Ultimate Edition.
Yeah, the one of them from the same idea, but it's not the same game in any way that I got rid of that I regret is Nearshima Hex. Because it's the same world. It's not the same game in any way, but it's a lot of fun with that little pure strategic asymmetric pieces that you get, and you try to outwit your opponent and blow up as many of their stuff as you possibly can. But yeah, so that's what we've been playing. Or did you have any other games you had on? That was awesome. Okay, so we're gonna skip the news because Gen Con Origins is happening right now. We have John out there meeting everyone, so we're gonna have tons of news next time. But for now, we're gonna go right into our main topic. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. What the heck is happening? We're gonna go in the main topic, and this is gonna be meta in games. Now, Dan's definitely going to be our expert on this because meta for gaming is normally associated with, let's say, CCGs, TRPGs, and social deduction games played back to back to back. So does anyone want to give what they feel is the best definition of meta in the aspect of what we're talking about for games?
So I don't have a dictionary definition in front of me.
Oh no, we're just doing whatever we feel is a definition.
So when we talk about the metagame is the elements of the game or the knowledge base behind the game that aren't actually part of the instance of the game that you are playing at that moment, right? So to a certain extent, if you like, to take an example that probably everyone is familiar with, the fact that chess is set up in a certain way in an initial state, and that the pieces can move certain ways. That's part of the game. That is part of the game. The fact that there's certain like 8-move openings that are booked, that's part of the metagame. Because you can recognize that someone's trying to execute a book opening and possibly run a counter once you've recognized it.
Yeah. And then there's valid and invalid metagaming. Social deduction has a lot of invalid metagaming where you're like, oh, you're the traitor. Obviously, the traitor next time, sort of thing.
Yeah, so technically, our joint assumption that James is always the traitor
It's generally right, but
is okay.
it still hurts.
First of all, it's
hurts.
generally true,
Yeah.
but it is invalid because there is no evidence for it.
Right.
Like we know that there's potentially a traitor, and we know that it's random. Technically speaking, whenever we sit down to a game of whatever, usually it's that zombie game. Sorry. Dead of Winter. Usually it's Dead of Winter. Like there's nothing, there's no evidence that James is the traitor, except that he's always been the traitor, and therefore he's got to be the traitor again this time. And that's like a fallacy logically, but it is a piece of it is an assumption, a metagame assumption that someone can make, that they will then make game decisions about and around that presumption. Right?
I will say it's statistically impossible for me to be the traitor as often as I'm being a traitor. So I swear people are cheated and making me the traitor. But especially when we have 3 back-to-back games and every single game I'm a traitor. No, that's not even possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the major types of meta that I thought would be good to cover. I just referred that as like carryover. So basically the concept of, oh, this happened in the last game, so this game, let's watch out for that. Or, oh, you won the last game, let's gang up on you.
Yeah. People don't like to not know things. So a lot of times when you have back-to-back games or back-to-back literally anything, people are going to develop preconceived notions of how to handle the next thing that occurs. So that can come back from bad knowledge or good knowledge, but it's going to come from something, because people are going to naturally try to mitigate.
People naturally draw presumptions from their prior experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And some of these presumptions are based on factual evidence. You, James, have probably drafted Blood Rage enough, right?
Oh, yeah.
To know the metagame of Blood Rage, right?
Yeah.
So you know which cards belong to what strategies. That is metagame knowledge.
Yes. And I can almost instantly tell by when cards get passed to me what they're doing, the other players are doing.
That recognition is equally metagame knowledge, and that's valid metagame knowledge, because like the card pool, despite being very large, is finite.
Yep.
And like reading signals is definitely something that happens in any drafting scenario, assuming you're familiar enough with the card pool.
Yeah.
You
look for those key pieces to disappear, and you're like, I know exactly what you're doing. I'm going to hate draft you the next round.
There is a lot of ways meta can be a very negative thing, but I think that could be one of the potential positives of metagaming in a strategic or a tactical game, rather. Something like Blood Rage. If you figure out a combo that you like and it works really well, you play that against one group. If you play a game again with them, that same combo may not work because they know that you figured that out, and they're going to watch for you trying to do that again. So you have to constantly rethink your strategies and come up with new combos to make it yourself win.
Yeah, and that's the problem with Blood Rage. When you get 3 people or more people, like the full player count of people that played it a ton, then you get like the weird off the wall strategies that are only broken because everyone else is focused on making sure you don't get the parts for the main strategies. So then you end up with something that can't compete with actually winning battles in Blood Rage.
The player base is knowledgeable enough to prevent any one player from assembling a pure strategy.
Right.
So you end up with a bunch of like mixed strategies and like, Frankenstein amalgams, basically.
Right. And sometimes they find a new thing, which is really cool, that really works out. Wouldn't work out normally, but it definitely works out in that case. And then you got to rethink your strategy.
That's another example, however, of what is metagaming in board gaming. Like, if you have a consistent play group that plays a bunch of different games together, then you're going to know the other players' like preferences and play styles, and like, oh, is this a card game where I could draw more cards? We know that Dan's gonna do that all game.
Yep. And I'm going to be like shedding cards like crazy. I'll be like, oh, I can trash cards. Like, I'm trashing cards.
Yeah. If it's a deck builder that allows you to junk cards from your deck, James is going to go after that. James is going to go after that.
Or if it's a worker placement, I'm probably going to go for those extra workers.
Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing like, you have that thing where you like there's nothing better than being like, every turn I can draw up my entire hand and like that's what happens, and I'm like boom, boom, if I can get there. And then Dan over there is like, I draw 50 cards, you die.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I have another form of meta that I really dislike, and that's like the coded language meta. So this is really common in games like Bridge
or Dixit.
Yeah.
The worst game ever created that should not be existent. I am signing a petition to have every Dixit game removed from the universe.
So I think Hanabi is the other one. Is that's the fireworks ones where you play your hands facing?
Hanabi is the one where you hold them up and you do the fireworks thing. You don't like that
one? Everyone can see your hand except yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's got like a deduction element.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of, okay, you're not allowed to communicate. But they have these the community has kind of come up with these rules of, oh, if you say it this way, it means this. And you have to talk in a very specific way to communicate things you're not allowed to tell people.
But wait, you like The Crew, and that game's all about cheating for everybody, apparently.
Well, people do cheat a lot in it, but it's like, you could play, there's enough flexibility in that game where you could play it the right way without cheating. And there isn't that community enforcement.
I think the difference here is that, like, in a lot of games, a lot of games with hidden information, you're allowed to talk, you just can't discuss the specific contents of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
In The Crew, the rule is you can't talk. And that you only have the communication token to reveal a single piece of information once during the whole hand.
But they do a lot of grunting and yelling.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, The Mind is a game that's all supposed to not allow any talking. So like literally, if you play The Mind with a group consistently, you've probably developed like a language of nonverbal communication to cope with that game.
That happens with The Crew too. When you have the group on there, you just know what the other player is going to do. Like, you don't need to communicate. You just know what they're going to do. So I think that's really cool in the aspect of metagaming, because as time goes by, you learn the other players. You learn how you need to play as a group.
Yeah, in this case, the meta game knowledge base that is being formed, the players are forming that knowledge base in order to solve the fundamental problem that the game rules present themselves with.
Yeah, because it's not the game, it's the people that are learning.
Yes, and I think that's the big difference between The Crew and games like The Bridge. Is you're
just hate
learning.
bridge, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, you're learning how to communicate, whereas in bridge, you are told this is how you're supposed to communicate. It's not really part of the game, but it's something that's kind of grown as the community.
Well, in a way, you're learning how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a game like Bridge, I mean, there's like an established like way you're supposed to bid in order to communicate that you've got a certain number of like points in hand, for example, points being like, you know, ranked cards.
Or
no, gestures are still not really allowed, but it's
I wasn't gesturing.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
There was something on my shoulder.
But it's considered acceptable to have these basically bridge language where this means this means this. And I just don't like having to learn that language.
It's also in how you play your cards, too. So the speed in which you play a card is supposed to determine, like, how many of you have of that card.
And it just feels like cheating. Because the whole point is you're not supposed to be
the
able to...
The whole point is cheating. I don't understand,
yeah.
I understand this. It's bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
I mean, like in terms, like in the case of Bridge, like we know that among the 4 players, the entire deck of 52 is dealt out, right? So, would you folks consider the act of card counting? Is that part of the game, or is that a part?
Oh
of
yeah,
the
like Bridge or Hearts or any of those, you have to card count, and how good you are at that game is 100% if you can card count, and you can do rudimentary statistics in your head of like what is the possible combinations everyone else has, based on how they're playing.
You can do like you can do like baby probability. Yeah. That is all part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm. This getting it into Magic in a minute. But one of the things in Magic you know never to do is sort your hand. Number one way of me telling you everything that you have in your hand, in Hearts or anything else, is if you sort your hand. Because I can tell where you pull your card out based on that what you have. Because even the people put them by suit and by numerical sequence. So it's not very difficult to get that down. In Magic, you shuffle your hand and you don't put things in order. You just don't do that. That's not what. Then that's why you get all these people that like play games, especially even me now. I just shuffle my hand just for absolutely no reason. In games that is not required for. Cooperative games, even I'm just shuffling.
For a lot of card game players, it becomes a nervous twitch that gets them in trouble.
It definitely became that over time, but it is a strategic element of Magic or any competitive CCG, or especially like if you're playing any games with a deck of cards, don't order your hand. Don't do it. Pick them up, leave them as they are.
Yeah, oddly enough, I do order my hand when I'm playing like Bridge or whatnot, or if I'm playing anything with a 52 card deck. But when it comes to Magic, I don't order my hand. Usually,
reason,
or I'll order my hand once at the beginning of the game just so I can get my first 2 or 3 land drops on the table.
Sure, you just put
all the land together on one side, so I know. Am I out of land drops yet? Okay, no.
But yeah, I try never to do that with. I play a lot of modern Magic, and yeah, they're. Oh, okay. We're gonna get into Magic in a little bit, but what I'm interested more in is you mentioned meta and TTRPGs or TRPGs.
Yes.
So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, so story time.
Okay.
Back in the day, I did used to run tabletop role-playing games for kids at a summer camp, right? And one of the things that we would tell the kids to not do periodically is we would tell them, stop that. That's metagaming. And what were they doing when we told them to do this? Is my question. So what do you think they were doing?
They
Remember,
were
these
talking out
are
of
12 to
context.
like 16, 17-year-olds.
Were they talking out of context for the game, like out of character?
No.
Okay. All right.
This is a
I'm
problem with
scared.
this is a problem for even adults who game. So these people were using knowledge that they had, their that person had, as character knowledge, and vice versa. So if they, as a player, knew something, they would act as if their character knew it.
Oh, yeah, that's not right.
So like a beholder
like,
knowing.
Vice versa.
It's like you're playing a medieval game and you're like, I know what that can of pop is. Like, no, you do not.
Or knowing the
I mean,
abilities of a beholder, kind of thing.
Yeah, knowing the like stuff like that, knowing the
Oh yeah, I
abilities
know your
of the
stats are blah blah blah
beholder,
blah
even
blah
though
blah
their
blah blah.
character
Yeah,
had never seen one before, right? Like, and this goes into several other like corners of the RPG realm, right? Like, think of think of a gem like the gem stresses that there's nothing in the room. What's the player's first thing that they do? They immediately panic and like start searching and all this other nonsense. Now some of that can be done on purpose. Like the GM could be like purposely insist that there's nothing in the room to make them panicked.
You do that when the GM wants to take a break. You're like, oh, okay, you guys discuss among yourselves what you want to do. I'm gonna go get some food.
Yeah, and
so in this case, the characters are acting not because they're necessarily reading the situation that's presented to themselves, but it's because the players are reading the situation that it's being presented to them.
yeah, and there's a lot of clever ways people have avoided the ability to meta, such as, I mean, the simplest way is just tweak your monsters a little bit so that maybe they have an ability that's not in the book. Just change things up a little bit, and the game is kind of set up for you to be able to do that. So
always have the stats of a mimic on your taped on the back of your DM screen, so you don't have to be looking something up when you tell them there's a treasure chest or a lamp post or a brazier or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The other big meta instance in RPGs is, people. You have to tell a player something that the other players aren't supposed to hear, and they're supposed to pretend they didn't hear it, which can be really hard. That's why it's like a lot of DMs will like whisper or take people out of the room and tell them, but sometimes you don't have that option.
Yeah, we used to we called them ninja notes, but basically we would write short messages on notepad papers, fold them, and pass them across the table. But yeah, like even though the content of the message was hidden, the other players could tell that something was going on, right? And they're even though the players were aware of this, their characters would often be just like a little bit more jumpy about like maybe the character that was like passing the notes. They'd be like, okay, this guy's up to something, right?
That's probably one way that, on a different note, that's probably one way how playing RPGs over the internet worked better, because you could like individually message people through Discord or whatnot, special hidden things, and no one would know. So, I mean, it does take away that thing that not everyone's at the same table, but it does solve the note passing thing.
The other big one that I've seen is where two players are interacting and one of them, and then you ask them to do a deception check. It's like, well, that's kind of a giveaway. So some GMs will say, "Oh, roll a persuasion or deception." Don't tell them which one you're rolling.
Or just tell them to roll a die.
Yeah.
Just give me the number. I guess they have modifiers, but
yeah, that's like another way in which metagaming can creep into RPGs, right? Is deception checks, perception checks. Like the GM should never tell the group to roll perception unless they're going to auto succeed, right? Because then they know there's something there, and if
Yeah.
they don't find what they're expecting to find, then they're just gonna like look harder.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what? I check
so
again.
like you don't tell them to roll perception checks unless you want them to find whatever it is,
Yeah.
or they need to find whatever it is. You know, roll that. You can roll that behind your screen when just use their bonus, right?
Yeah.
It's a really sneaky way to do it that I kind of prefer, but
And if you want to make your
unless you trust them with that, right? Because you know maybe you have a really good group that treats treats the game with the proper gloves that it needs, and like they could be like, okay, I failed my perception check. I know seen nothing important here. I'm just gonna walk right through the trapped corridor, right?
and if
I
you
had a
want to
friend-
go ahead.
I said I had a friend that would take the character sheets and make a copy of them, and then just have people roll randomly. But then some of the rolls actually meant things, so they would add the modifiers themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then tell the story as they went. I thought that was pretty cool idea, where they just have them roll, say a number. Okay, you roll. Tell me a number, and sort of thing.
Yeah, if you want to make your players nervous, just roll randomly behind your screen.
He said that worked out real too, because everyone was like sweating, like, why am I rolling? Literally no reason. But yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's like, oh yeah, make people nervous by just rolling dice behind the DM screen, and
or make people not nervous by just resolving the situation without a roll. Hey, I'm going to do this thing. Okay, sure, you do the thing.
All right.
Yeah,
so...
you find the treasure. I don't need a perception check. You're going to search the room for an hour. What the heck?
What? You're mad? Oh no, it became a mimic. I'm so sorry. It's a mimic now. Fight that. So, do we have anything we want to talk about those before we get into the king of metagaming? The master of metagaming? The most metagaming thing that exists?
well, I had another minor one. I mean, Dan already kind of brought up a little bit, was scripted play. So this chess was the example he used, and it's kind of the idea of there is a formulated response. Like tic-tac-toe is the most extreme example. It's like, oh, if you go here, then you have to go here. And it's like the idea of people have played the game enough that there's set strategies that and set ways to respond to each action. Do you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be fun to some degree, where you're learning all the optimal plays.
Yeah, it doesn't include cool cards.
Yeah, but I don't like it in like chess where you're trying to memorize a named strategy.
Well, you make up strategies as you go and be like, this is the cold pluck maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, there are games out there, and of course, chess is one of them. And there are probably some board games that have been on the market long enough to develop them. But like, they're board games where effectively there's a book, right? Where the game's been played so much by so many people who are very, very good at it that they've sort of come up with optimal ways to at least start the game.
Yeah.
And if you deviate from those optimal ways, well, then you're just playing suboptimally.
Like Puerto Rico.
Well, any game that's
I have heard that game has a book. I haven't played it enough to confirm or deny it. Haven't looked that up.
I mean, even without the book, there is certain things that everyone needs to do in order at the beginning of the game, and that shouldn't change, which sort of ruins the game.
any game that's pure strategy that has no luck element has the potential for this. And the simpler the game, the more likely it's going to come out.
Unless you fight a chicken, two chickens playing tic-tac-toe.
Okay. So what were you going to talk about? The big one.
Well, I mean, for me, I think the largest sort of like, at least professional form of metagaming Money wise, I don't know if that's changed, but it was always Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering, there's tons of tournaments, there's a ton of money in it, there's a ton of desire to create the best decks. Net decking, I believe, is a thing just from Magic, doesn't come from anything else. They might do it with other things, but I think that's what popularized it and got it into people's heads. I definitely did it when I played Modern. It's sort of like you have specific decks. When you play them and you play someone else, within a couple turns, you know what their deck is. And
I wanna stress this point for people who are now, we're all going to talk about Magic here because that's
yeah,
where our experience lies. But like this is true of other competitive, like
it's like
collectible
Pokemon
card
and yeah,
games or games in which you like build your force or your deck beforehand and you from a selection of pieces. So this is true for Magic, this is true for Pokemon, this is true for Yu-Gi-Oh. It's probably true for like hero clicks and like team building in that game.
yeah,
Um, right, and so on and so forth. It might even be true for like games like Warriors, right? Because that game has like so many, or Dice Masters. There we
yeah,
go, Dice Masters. That game has so many expansions and possible dice in it. There's probably a correct way to team build that game.
yeah. There
Um,
definitely is.
but basically, uh, when I attend a Magic event, um, the event is a specific format. Now, the format determines like the pool of cards that are legal. Um, and you know, the modern format is a ton of cards, probably several thousand. But the trouble is, well, not the trouble, but the point is that of the several thousand that can be played, probably less than 2,000 are played.
Or you, yeah,
Right? Actually see play in a tournament of a competitive nature. So if I sit down at a table against somebody else and we're both playing Modern and we're both there to win prizes, whether that's the form of like packs or even store credit, like even at my like weekly store events, um, I know what my opponent is on. Their 60 card deck plus 15 card sideboard, probably before the end of turn two,
yep,
right? Um,
yep,
Possibly before that. I might know turn one off their first land play. They haven't cast a spell at all. First land, I know what deck they're on. Possibly.
yep. And it's all about efficiency too. So it's really hard once so many people have developed a deck and found the best efficiencies. It's really not easy to hide something in there. Meaning, to because you know my deck on turn two, it's not really easy to put a Trojan horse in there without destroying the efficiency of the deck. So people are like, oh, well, if he knows your deck, just throw a couple other things in there and it'll change it up. You really, it's hard because it's all about efficiency. You guys, it's like a super strategic battle where you have to respond and contrast. Your 15 card sideboard is like your big thing that you modify based on the pool that's going to probably be there. The main
Yeah.
deck has a slight modifications, but you can't be a whole lot if you're competitively playing with a set.
Yeah. In the game of Magic Gathering, though, the term metagame takes on a completely different
Yeah,
meaning. Because if you go to say a large-ish tournament that's, I don't know, more than 100 people or even more than 50 people, you can call the sum total of all the decks that everyone has brought to that tournament the metagame for that specific tournament.
yep,
And that, like, the fact, like, the breakdown of how many people are on deck X versus deck Y versus deck Z matters for
yeah,
that specific event, right? Um, it's crazy.
yeah. And the big thing that comes with a lot of change is when a new set gets rotated into it, then you get a little bit of flux if it happens right before a tournament. So then you have people that have maybe figured out different combos and different things they can do. And then you get a little bit of flux, but immediately after that tournament, you got it pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it gets like this is probably still the case, but there exists in Magic Gathering tournament grinders who go to various large tournaments across the
Yeah.
country. Say you're located in Western Pennsylvania, like we are, you might go out to Philly, down to West Virginia, and out to Cincinnati or Cleveland, right, in order to visit various large scale meta, in addition to the ones that are in Pittsburgh, uh, in order to visit the large events. If you keep track of, if you're somebody who keeps track of the large events in other areas of the country, you'll see the metagame evolve between different events. Like one deck will make up like I don't know, maybe 15% of the event, and then the next event there'll be more decks that are more effective against that deck because they expect it to be popular, right?
Yeah, or
There'll be
ones will
people
drop
playing,
off
yeah,
if they're
or
not
there'll be
winning.
people playing slight modifications to that deck, like a difference of 2 to 6 cards, in order to like gain some advantage against the decks that are trying
Yeah.
to play against it, right? I'm looking at a breakdown of the modern metagame according to Magic the Gathering Goldfish. The most popular deck in the format right now, by the way, is 12.5% of the meta is this one deck. There have been times in the past, specifically for the game Yu-Gi-Oh, where the competitive format was like 2 decks or 3 decks.
Yeah.
Like that was like 99+% of the metagame was contained within 3 decks. That
Yeah,
is
Magic
generally
definitely
considered
a
a
little bit
bad.
more
That is generally
diverse. Yeah.
considered a bad thing, by the
Yeah,
way,
that's a bad thing.
for for these kinds of games.
I will say Magic has a lot more of the different types of decks. Not a whole ton, but a lot more. But that 15 card sideboard is like ridiculously important. And that does change all the time based on your pool and what you think is going to be happening. And definitely between tournaments, because people learn, they change, you need to defend yourself. So you need, like, if you have a lot of artifacts, you might need to put a lot of artifact protection in your deck or ways of getting them back or other things.
Yeah. So in tournament Magic, you have a 60 card main deck, 60 card minimum main deck,
Yeah.
and you're sorry, you have a sideboard that could be anywhere between 0 and 15 cards. So if you're participating in tournament Magic, you have to play with your main deck the game 1 of each match that you participate. A tournament
Yeah.
is several matches, several. The big ones actually go across multiple days and are like usually like 8 or 9, but like a day is like 5 or 6 rounds usually, I think. Um, but at the end of the first game, so after someone's already won a game, you have the opportunity of swapping cards out of your main deck with the cards in your sideboard. And you do this in order to make it like faster or slower, or to add more answers against your opponent's threats, or to add more threats that you don't think your opponent has answers to. Just trying to get, or just trying to find add cards that you think are good in this particular matchup, this one match that you're playing. But of course, you have to build your sideboard to take into account all the decks in the format, because you're stuck
Yeah.
with the same 60 plus 15 for the whole tournament.
Yep. So my question for that, we're talking a lot about modern, but standard got extended for a longer period of time in the run, almost to the point where I haven't checked, but I think it's almost longer than modern now for the length of time that you can have these sets in.
So yeah, just to take an example
Yeah.
from Magic, right? There's several formats, we call them, right? So Legacy Vintage basically is
Yeah.
everything that's ever been printed. There aren't that many big events for those because the cost of the cards that are no longer see print are astronomical, and there aren't that many in circulation. But modern is relatively accessible. It's been around for a while. Um, they they introduced a new format. What is this one called?
Oh, is it not called standard anymore for the one that goes 3 years?
just a second here. Pioneer, I think.
Is it called Pioneer?
It's either Pioneer or Historic. I forget which. But they introduced so Modern is a non-rotating format that's like from the original Mirrodon block forward. It's a very large block of cards / time period.
It's like
so
okay,
the Modern
so,
format
yeah.
right now is huge. And the power scale of the decks that exist in Modern is to the point where it's basically like Legacy, except it's not impacted by the reprint policy, because all the cards that are legal in Modern are new enough that Wizards could hypothetically reprint them if they wanted to. That's not true of Legacy. There are some cards in Legacy that will never see a reprint.
Well, you say that.
Yeah, never say never.
Yeah.
But for Pioneer or Historic or whatever they called it, they created a new non-rotating format. And this format is as big as Modern was when it was first created, like 5, 6, however many years ago that was. I don't even remember. More than 5, definitely. And then Standard remains the only rotating format. So by rotating, it means that eventually when sets get too old, they fall off of Standard. So Standard is only the most recently printed sets. And this year in the fall, Standard will not rotate. And then next year it will rotate normally. So starting this fall,
a year.
Yeah, starting this fall, Standard will grow to the point where it's roughly 3 years big, and then it will shrink by 4 sets, and then it will grow until those 4 sets are replaced, and then it will shrink again by 4 sets, because it only rotates once a year. But yeah, they're effectively adding 4 sets to Standard over the course of a year.
And Standard is, I think, the most desirable by Wizards of the Coast, and it does let some of the new sets shine a little better, because it doesn't have to necessarily go against some of the super powered cards that are in Modern.
I mean, I don't know how true that is anymore.
They've been printing some pretty powerful cards. So
obviously, the standard format definitely used to exist in order to promote new sets,
right?
And to sell booster packs. It was very important to sell booster packs. It still is. But now a lot of Standard play happens online.
Yeah, which is a whole different ball game. But yeah,
because Magic Arena is a thing.
Yeah, when you don't want physical cards for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know who would want that. Not me, that's for sure.
I never got that. Like, yeah, I'm going to pay $10,000 for a digital card. No, that's not that much, but still, it's the same thing. I'm just not into the digital cards, or at least not paying for them. But yeah, it's still super popular. The digital format, they can run more tournaments with the digital format. The problem is it doesn't really help anybody but Wizards of the Coast. So
absolutely, that's why they love it.
Right. So like the printed cards help local game shops. A lot of them, that's 50 to, or used to be 50 to 60% of their income was Magic the Gathering tournaments and stuff like that, from the sales of the cards themselves, not like the tournament itself, but the generation of people purchasing the cards. And the more people that go to online, the more it hurts that. Plus, what the heck?
Feel we've strayed a bit from the topic of metagame here.
I was just going on a tirade. I was like, I stupid digital cards. Get them out of my face. Digital cards. Stupid digital cards. All right, continue.
But yeah, all of these collectible card games have like a competitive scene, if you will, that shifts between decks over time. And that is for that game. It's metagame, effectively. Like, what cards are people playing? How are they playing them? Is there some combo they're trying to assemble? Or, what are the viable strategies? And so on and so forth. So knowledge of that metagame, right, is one of the things that is definitely tested in a competitive arena.
Yeah.
Like somebody who has superior knowledge, of that metagame, all other things being equal, has an advantage in winning whatever prizes are at stake.
Yeah.
Which, that's just the way that works. There's no way that can't work that way, because you can't stop players from accumulating and using that knowledge, basically.
Yeah. And yeah, I was used to be a big thing. I used to spend, and it was fun to spend like hours and hours like thinking these things out. Like I knew the different decks that were available, like what, like because of the previous tournament, I knew like what's probably going to show up on the next one. So I'm like, well, what would be the best deck that I could make against those? And then what do I need to put in my sideboard to like mitigate where I fall short because of the deck that I chose? I really enjoy doing that. I always, it burned me a lot, but I always like trying to throw like slight modifications in the deck. Most of the time that didn't work out because those decks are pretty darn efficient after a while. So throwing different cards in it, makes them less efficient, especially if you're not talking about your sideboard. But yeah, I love doing
Now,
that.
yeah, so there is such a thing as a deck that is relatively unknown in the metagame doing well at a large event. Jay, Nathan's tapped out already.
It's like, I'm not sick
and,
of these. It
and
is.
we call those decks rogue decks because literally they're trying to sneak in under the radar.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can win with those just being out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
they could definitely win. Usually, like it takes a considerable amount of effort
Yeah.
to create, test, and play a new shell, which is
Yeah.
effectively what a rogue deck is. And usually, people build them to the point where they could do okay. They can win some games. Maybe they could do well enough in the event to make day 2 or to make some prizes. But ultimately, the decks that are better tested, more entrenched in the format, are the ones that are going
Yeah.
to
You definitely
win.
are an underdog if you do that. And
The one potential exception to this rule is when new cards get introduced,
yeah,
which is part of the reason why all these games like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon are constantly printing new cards.
Yeah.
Because when new cards get introduced into the environment, it's like, oh, well, when the new cards are first introduced, like no one's sure exactly how they're going to impact everything.
Yeah.
People with an eye for these things who have experience can pick out the 3 or 4 cards in the set that are like, well, this has got some possibilities. Let's throw it into a shell where it fits and test it a bit and see if it does better than what's already there. Right.
Yeah.
But it
And
takes testing in order to determine that.
yeah, and that's all the fun stuff. And I actually think the game would not be popular if we didn't have like an influx of different cards at different points. Because I mean, at that point the game would stagnate and you'd have your decks. That would be it. There would be no innovation, no change. Those are the decks. People have already figured out from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tournaments. These are the ones. But when you get a new pool come in, that's the fun part. That's the chaos part, because you're like, have to look at every card. Then you have to look at all the other cards that are available, because did this just create a cool synergy that no one ever thought of before? And you get that rogue deck in there that sometimes just works because of new cards now, and it becomes a thing, and then it gets banned basically.
That's the other case where there's a significant shift in a tournament metagame. If a game piece gets banned, and specifically for Magic, a
Yeah.
piece could get banned if like Wizards of the Coast looks at tournament results,
Yeah.
and it looks at like how many decks are running card X and card Y, right?
Yeah.
So it's got like some really good statistics to determine whether or not a card is actually bad for a format. And it has been known to X cards in order
Yep.
to try to create diversity in a format that was relatively closed. So
Yep. And there's been cases where they're just like massive bans because something went horribly wrong. It's happened, but yeah, it's fun when it does too, because you're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then yeah,
unless it was your deck that got banned and then you hate them.
I've had a deck where a couple of the cards got key parts of the cards that got banned. I'm like, no, I don't have time to figure out a new one. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't specifically mine. It was someone else's that I modified slightly, but still the key pieces got banned. But yeah, so basically, I think Magic the Gathering is the king of metagaming. It is definitely, I mean, the only other one that might fight it for its place is poker, but for different reasons. That's more of metagaming people and that sort of thing. And that's mainly due because of the huge jackpots that you can get with that. Not that the card pool ever changes or anything like that. It's just metagaming the people in that. And how you react or not react to things, like, yeah, more social part. But yeah, so anyone else want to bring anything else up cool about metagaming or any other idea? I know Nathan fell asleep, so maybe he's awake now and maybe has something, a pearl of knowledge here.
No,
Before
I think.
shatter your all mind here coming up soon.
Well, I actually came up with this topic, but I didn't even think of Meta the Game or Magic the Gathering, whatever you want to call it.
Fell into your own trap.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, pretty much.
All right. That's fine. I'll start off with a warmer while you bring up your stuff here. And this is a so this isn't the silly game because Nathan will have the silly game, but this is going to be my logic question for the two of you and see which one of you can get it. All right, so this is the logic puzzle. You and two other friends go to a restaurant. The bill is $30. Each of you pay $10. You get up to go and leave, and you don't leave a tip. All right. The owner figures out that he overcharged you, and the bill should have been $25. So he sends the waitress or waiter with $5 to give back to the three of you. Well, this person is very unhappy that you didn't leave a tip. So they stole $2 and they gave each of you $1, so $3. So each of you paid $9. So that adds up to $27 plus the $2 that the person stole. So it's $29. What happened to the missing dollar?
I've heard this and I know the answer. Well, I didn't actually hear the answer. I figured it out, but
Okay, well, let Dan have a second, and then you tell me what you think the answer is if you have it. Dan, what do you think the answer of this one is? And this is one of the logic puzzles that breaks people because it's math is like taught as finite, so it's hard to figure out, like, from what I just said, what the problem is.
Yeah, I feel like there's something wrong with the statement that each of you paid $9.
No, that's true. That is correct. Each of you paid $9 because you got $1 back. That part is true. So $27 plus $2 is $29. There's still something wrong.
Well, but it's also true that, like, the manager sent back $5 and the bill total was $25.
Well, the bill total was supposed to be 25. So keep that in mind. The bill total was 30, but was supposed to be 25. Handed $5 to the waitress. The waitress took 2 of them and gave you guys 3.
So yeah, the 3 plus the 2 plus the 25 makes up the 30. So the 30 is still there at that point, right?
You can consider it as $32 were exchanged. or you can consider it the other way around, where you had a negative $5 and did it. But either way, the answer is there's still $30. You only got $3.
Yeah, the $2 he stole was not from.
Yeah, it's not from.
Was not from the 30. It was from the 27 that you.
There's no 25.
Yeah.
They just gave it. That's the thing that messes people up. There's no 25. It was supposed to be 25. So it's the number you can forget. That's the number that messes people up. It's that the bill was 30 and you got $3 back. So it's still 30 because 9 times 3 is 27 plus 3 is 30. You have to forget about the other $2.
Well, yeah, the $2 he stole was out of the 27,
not the. That's the answer to that. Which is a really weird logic puzzle because the 25 screws people up, and I specifically said it louder, so it sticks in your head.
Well, the $2.
All right, Nathan.
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
Let me just pull up a random game on BGG. Browse.
I asked that question at work with my fellow senior level software engineers. None of them got it. So it was funny.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of luck involved in this. So we're presenting this like a BGG reviewer who's reviewing a game they haven't played, and the more convincing you can be of your review of this game that you've never played, the more points you could potentially get. So basically, you have to sell me that you've played this game and your opinion is valid. And I just...
so I just had to give bullshit?
Basically. The more adamant and the more stronger your opinion is, the better. So I just went to BGG, hit give me a random game, and that's...
It's funny if I actually played it.
Oh, boy.
I doubt it. So I'm going to tell you what your game is. If you want to pull it up on BGG, sure. I think I'll let that...
Do I need to actually... You actually going to read what the game is?
I'll give you a brief description of the game.
Okay.
So, the name of the game is
who's doing first? Either of us?
It'll be... Might as well be James first. The name of your game is Verget mit mir.
Okay, yeah. Unless there's an English translation to that, I don't know.
Basically, in this game, each player has to get 6 player pieces from the 6 outer straight to the center space with a picture... With pictures a die? What? Translation issues.
Oh, man. It sounds like a good one. I wish I had this one.
The number die determines which pieces may move 1 space according to the line it moves in. If the color die shows the player's color, the player may move 2 spaces. If the color of another player, the other player may move 1 space too. Okay.
Okay. So There Get Me is very much like Candyland. It's not much different. You do have the ability when you roll that you're going to move 1 space or 2 spaces, but that color thing basically shoots you forward. And it's going to be a race game where you're trying to get to the end of the map first. So basically the luck of your rolling is going to determine how your standings go throughout the game. And that's basically what I hate about mass market games in general, is that rolling is the centerpiece of the game. And this one doesn't change that. It is still the centerpiece of the game. Also, really, really horrible component quality, and I didn't like the dice.
Okay. So, I'd say that was a probably pretty apt review of this game.
Yes!
I mean, I haven't played it either, but
James might get this.
You lobbed me a softball on that one.
James might get this just because he has more experience reviewing.
Okay. So, I got one for Dan.
Oh, boy.
The game is called Drinks and Daggers. So, Drinks and Daggers is a cooperative drinking card game set in the world of the podcast Greetings Adventures. What? Okay, it's a drinking card game set in the world of the podcast. I don't know if that's the name. Greetings Adventures must be the name of the podcast, which I've never heard of. Each player chooses a unique card deck to represent their character and work together to defeat a villain, also represented by a deck of cards. Since the hero's deck have different actions, items, and reactions, which synergize in nearly endless ways, and each villain presents varied challenges, every game will play out differently.
Greetings and Adventures is the name of the podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if they're still around at all. Present.
I can.
Well, yours.
All right, let me see if I can't review this game. So, for some reason, this company sent me a drinking game. This company obviously doesn't know me at all because I'm actually personally dry. I don't drink, so I was using the drink tokens, and you know that the game uses as that you can use to represent. But so like drinking's like directly tied to the game mechanism. So like I mean each hero does kind of like have a power when they drink. This is oh man. Yeah, the variable power players aren't interesting, and yeah, as a non-drinker, this just totally falls flat on me. No pun intended.
Okay, I have to give you a little bit of a point for the like sort of attempt at a pun.
We had that falls flat for me.
But you seemed a lot less committed to your opinion than James did, so I think I do have to give this to James. Unfortunately,
I do know my dice rolling games.
I mean, you were given a rolling move game. If I was given
I know that was like
game,
a softball. I was like,
I would have said,
I didn't even need to hear more. I'm like, I destroyed this
game. You can move on. Done.
It's like many monopolies cried at the same time. Something bad happened in the universe.
so do we want one more round?
Sure.
Okay, and we'll start with Dan this time.
Yeah, sure.
Your game is Alcatraz Escape, a dice game for 2 players. You have to transport your prisoners from one side to the other. The first one, with all prisoners at the other side, is the winner. You have to throw with a black and white die, as opposed to the number of stones represented the escape gate. For instance, when you throw 3 with the white stone, you put one of your prisoners in the third white gate, the black stone in the black gate. With 6, you may choose which gate.
I thought I played this game and it's not right.
Yeah, I thought I played this game too when you first said the name, and I'm like, no, this is yeah. All right, okay, so for this game, I'll do my spiel. Folks, there's a roll and move. You can move on. Done.
I need more than that.
Okay, if it helps you out, this game, because I brought it up, has really horrible wooden components. And it has this like
I was unable to get
for some reason
like looking thing. And this, like, you ever see a xylophone?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Those little mallets you have a xylophone. You have this little, looks like a boat full of, like, the peg people, and 2 dice. You do have a black and white die for some reason.
Okay. The other thing that might help is it's dice rolling and memory is the mechanics.
Well, yeah, so that should be great. There you go. Now you can puke all over. What do you think about dice rolling and memory match?
What do you guys think about dice rolling and a memory mechanic? Well, this is Alcatraz Escape, the roll and move where you also play memory. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I mean, that game is probably unfortunately fairly expensive with all the wood that it has in it.
So I think we can go with that, and we will get to James's game.
All right.
How do you spell Alcatraz? I need to find.
Oh, that's the problem I had, by the way. It was Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
Escape. And the audience has already seen these pictures, so they know how horrible it is. You seeing that wonderness? Or wonderfulness. That's
okay, I found the wrong game. That's cooperative hand management worker placement.
Nope.
That sounds infinitely better.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
This is from year 2000. Alcatraz Escape.
2000.
If you just type in ALCAT.
Alcatraz Escape. Alcatraz Escape 2000. Okay, let me check out this. Oh my God, the back art is. James, make sure you insert an image of this game during.
Oh, it's there
the
already for them. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Okay, yeah, that's man.
This is like that's the type of.
What do you call it? It's 2-player only too, huh?
Yeah, it'd be like the type of game you see at Cracker Barrel when you go to Cracker Barrel. It'll be like, oh look, it's an old person game of old people things.
I mean, from the very brief description, it sounds like it could have a Yahtzee component too, where you're trying to match the die you're rolling with the gates you're trying to break through. I don't even know.
I think it might be that a little bit because there's 6 holes for the black, 6 holes for the white, and I think literally what you roll is the pegs you put in, and the mallets probably just smash them in for some reason is my guess. And if you roll the same number, I guess you don't put a dang peg in. So it's sort of like a Tenzi feel to it.
Yeah. There's also a mallet that comes with this game. That's scary.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. All right, Nathan, what you got for me? Scythe, I'm hoping.
That'd be hilarious.
Well, I came up with an expansion, and the expansion really tells you nothing from the description. So I'll actually give you the base game.
Okay.
Okay. The base game is Tome the Light Edition. So, scattered around the world, ancient books lie hidden in plain sight. Contained within these mystic tomes is said to be arcane secrets of life, power, and the very forces of nature. It is said that whoever finds these tomes can control magic. You
can literally actually review this one right now. So you might.
I'll give you a different one. What is the chances?
I'm doing a video on this in like 3 days.
What?
Right,
okay, no spoilers. No spoilers.
What is the chances on a 20,000 plus games? Come on.
As soon as he said, I'm like, hold on. It's literally right here in my review pile.
Oh.
Okay, I think James wins by default now.
Sure.
I mean, you randomly rolled like the 1 in 10,000 or the 6 in 10,000. I don't even know.
I was gonna say
we gotta end with that. We gotta end with looking forward to that.
Boom. Yeah. That is crazy. That was a randomizer found the game that I'm actually reviewing currently. I need to get a couple more games in on it. So, yeah.
So James won.
Yep, that's fine.
I hope you guys all enjoyed this one. We're going to be coming back for next week. We're going to do a playthrough, and then after that, we're going to talk all about Origins and whatever else our topic was. That's going to be awesome. And yeah, stay tuned, folks. Good night.